Welcome back to the deep dive. Today we're diving into the lives of a group of kids who call themselves the Capitães da Areia.
The captains of the sand.
Yeah, exactly.
If you want to be fancy.
If you want to be fancy,
Yeah.
they roamed the streets of 1930s Bahia, Brazil, and their story comes to us from Jorge Amado's novel of the same name.
Mm.
Now you might think this is just another story about street urchins,
Mm.
but it's so much more.
Oh, it really is. Amado doesn't shy away from the harsh realities of their lives, but he also digs into their dreams, their loves, their losses. He paints a really complex picture of childhood poverty and
Yep.
social injustice and just how resilient kids can be.
Yeah, I mean, it's really remarkable. Okay, so first let's set the scene. Imagine Bahia in the 1930s.
Yeah.
A bustling port city, but with a dark underbelly.
Yeah.
These kids, they live in an abandoned warehouse right on the docks called the Trapiche.
The trashish.
Yeah, it used to be a symbol of trade and prosperity. Now it's decaying just like the lives of these abandoned children.
Yeah, and what's interesting is that even though they're living in this rundown warehouse, they've formed their own society with their own rules and hierarchy. It's like a microcosm of the larger society, but with even higher stakes.
Exactly. And each of these captains has a unique story. There's Pedro Bala, the leader. He's driven, charismatic, but haunted by the memory of his father, who died in a worker strike. Then you have Professor, who finds escape in books and art, almost like he's trying to transcend his reality,
Yeah.
you know?
And we can't forget Gato,
Oh, Gato.
who uses his charm to navigate the city's nightlife. He's the one who can usually find a way to make some money, even if it means bending the rules.
Right, and then there's Pirulito, who finds solace in religion. It's almost like he's searching for some kind of redemption, something to cling to in all this chaos. And then there's the others. Volta Seca, whose anger simmers just below the surface. João Grande, the gentle giant who protects the younger ones. And Sempernis, ardent by a life of hardship and deeply distrustful.
Mm-hmm.
It's fascinating how Amado brings together this incredibly diverse group of personalities.
It really makes you think about how individuality survives, even in the most challenging circumstances. I mean, despite living on the streets, they each have such distinct personalities, desires, and ways of coping.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
But it's not just about their individual struggles. Amado also shows us how society views them
Yeah, how does he do that?
by weaving in excerpts from fictional newspaper articles.
Oh, interesting.
It's like getting a glimpse into the public's perception of these kids.
And it's a pretty grim perception, isn't it? I mean, fear, disgust, but there are also hints of pity and even calls for reform.
Right, but those calls for reform often come with a healthy dose of hypocrisy.
Yeah.
For example, there's this article where the director of the local reformatory brags about Pedro Bala's regeneration after he's sent there.
Oh, wow.
But Amado makes you question whether institutions like that actually help or just perpetuate the cycle of poverty and crime.
That's such a crucial point. Amado is forcing us to look beyond the surface and examine the systems that are supposedly in place to help these kids and ask ourselves if they're actually doing any good.
He really makes you think about how society often tries to address the symptoms of poverty without ever tackling the root causes.
Exactly. It's like putting a Band-Aid on a gaping wound. But despite all this darkness, Amado also gives us these moments of incredible humanity, these glimmers of hope that shine through the cracks.
Yes. For example, remember this scene where Professor tries to sell his artwork to a wealthy couple? They treat him horribly. But then this random cafe worker shows an unexpected kindness. It's like a reminder that even in a world that can be so cruel, there are still good people out there.
And I think those moments of kindness are even more powerful because they're so unexpected. They highlight the fact that even in the midst of hardship, human connection can still flourish.
And then, of course, there's Dora. Her arrival at the Trapiche really changes things for the boys.
Oh, Dora, yeah. She brings such a powerful sense of warmth and love to the group. Suddenly, the Trapiche feels less like a hideout and more like a home.
She becomes a surrogate mother, a sister, a confidant. For a brief time, it seems like the boys might actually have a chance at a stable, loving family.
But it's a fragile hope, isn't it?
Yeah.
Because as we know, tragedy strikes, Dora contracts smallpox and dies, leaving the boys utterly devastated.
That scene where they hold her funeral on Corrida de Deo's boat, it's just heartbreaking. They're adrift not only literally on the water, but also metaphorically in their lives.
It's such a powerful image, these children who have already lost so much now mourning the loss of this woman who brought light and love into their lives. And it's a turning point in the novel. Each boy responds to Dora's death in his own way, and their paths begin to diverge.
It's like they're scattered to the winds, each forced to confront their own destiny. Professor, for example, decides to pursue his art, leaving the Trapiche behind. But even as he finds success in the outside world, he's still haunted by the memories of his life on the streets.
It's as if he can never truly escape his past. The faces, the experiences, they're all embedded in his art.
Then there's Volta Seca, who always had that simmering rage. He ends up joining a band of cangaceiros, outlaw bandits who roam the Brazilian backlands.
It's a desperate, violent choice. But for Voltaseca, it makes a kind of tragic sense. He's always struggled with his anger, and now he's found an outlet for it, however destructive it may be.
And Sempernas. Well, his story takes an even darker turn.
His journey is perhaps the most heartbreaking of all. Disabled, filled with resentment and mistrust, he sinks deeper into the criminal underworld. He becomes a stark reminder of how societal neglect and personal hardship can push someone towards self-destruction.
But Pedro Bala, he chooses a different path. He becomes involved in the labor movement, fighting for workers' rights, just like his father did before him.
It's interesting, isn't it? It's like Dora's death, in a way, reignites his father's legacy within him. It gives him a sense of purpose that goes beyond mere survival. He's fighting for something bigger than himself.
It's almost a cyclical journey.
Yeah.
Pedro Bala, the captain of Lost Boys, becomes a captain of a distant kind, leading the charge for social justice.
It really speaks to the transformative power of memory, how the past can shape our present and fuel our future.
You know what strikes me about Amado's writing is his ability to portray these incredibly brutal realities alongside moments of genuine beauty and tenderness. Like that scene where the boys overcome with lust almost assault Dora, but Pedro Bala and João Grande intervene.
That scene is so unsettling, but it reveals a lot about their internal moral code. It shows that even in their harsh environment, they're capable of recognizing right and wrong.
Exactly. And remember the episode with Pirulito and the baby Jesus statue?
Yes, where he's so desperate to help this abandoned, starving statue that he almost steals food for it, but ultimately stops himself because he's terrified of eternal damnation.
It's such a funny yet heartbreaking moment. It shows how even in the midst of poverty, these kids are grappling with complex moral dilemmas.
Absolutely. They're trying to find their own compass in a world that's offered them very little guidance.
And Amado constantly plays with this tension between hope and despair. Like the scene where the boys pool their meager earnings to spend a night on the carousel.
Yes, that's such a beautiful image, a fleeting moment of pure joy amidst their grim reality.
Or when Professor, after being so cruelly rejected by the wealthy couple, experiences that unexpected act of kindness from the cafe worker, it's like a tiny spark of light in the darkness.
Those moments are so important because they remind us of the power of human connection, how even small acts of compassion can make a difference.
It makes you wonder what happens when that need for survival, that us against the world mentality, clashes with the institutions that are supposed to be helping them. The police, the reformatory, it's like a constant battle against a system that's stacked against them.
Right, and this is where Amado's social commentary really hits hard. He shows how institutions that are meant to protect and rehabilitate often end up perpetuating the cycle of poverty and crime. The reformatory, for example, is depicted as a brutal, dehumanizing place that crushes the boys' spirits rather than reforming them.
It's like the system itself is designed to break them. There's that gut-wrenching scene where Pedro Bala is thrown into solitary confinement, this tiny dark cell with barely enough food and water to survive. It's pure torture.
And yet, even in that moment of utter despair, Pedro Bala finds a way to resist. He focuses on his anger, his hatred for the guards, and the injustice of his situation, and uses it as fuel to keep going. It speaks to the incredible strength of his spirit, but it's also a chilling indictment of a system that's supposed to be helping these kids.
But of course, Pedro Bala eventually escapes. He gets a message from a mysterious, lame man, and with some smuggled tools, makes a daring escape in the dead of night. It's a pretty thrilling sequence.
It really highlights their resourcefulness, their ability to adapt and overcome even the most difficult obstacles, but it also underscores the fact that for them, freedom is a fragile thing, something that can be snatched away at any moment.
And that escape leads to one of the most powerful scenes in the book, the boys banding together to rescue Dora from the orphanage where she's been unjustly confined. They storm the building in the middle of the night, armed with whatever they can find.
It's a testament to their fierce loyalty, their willingness to risk everything for each other. And it's a turning point for Pedro Bala. He realizes that his fight isn't just about his own survival anymore. It's about challenging the systems that oppress and exploit the vulnerable.
So as we reach the end of our deep dive, what's the takeaway for you? What stays with you about the story of the Capitães da Areia?
For me, it's the reminder that even in the darkest corners of society, even amidst poverty and hardship, there is humanity, there is beauty, and there is hope. These kids are victims of circumstance, but they are also capable of great love, loyalty, and courage.
And their story challenges us to look beyond the labels, to see the individuals, and to confront the uncomfortable truths about the systems that perpetuate poverty and injustice.
Absolutely. The Captains of the Sand may be fictional characters, but their struggles resonate across cultures and time periods. Their story forces us to ask ourselves how we can create a world where every child has a chance to thrive, a world where the trebuchet is not a reality, but a distant memory.
It's a story that stays with you long after you finish reading it, prompting you to think about the bigger picture and how we can all contribute to a more just and compassionate world. And that, my friends, is a wrap on this deep dive into the lives of the Capitães da Areia. We hope you found it insightful and thought-provoking. Until next time, keep exploring, keep questioning, and keep diving deep.